2 is about circles. So there's a form called center radius form that I've always just called standard form. So if I call it standard form, that's why, because it's what I'm used to calling it. And here is what it looks like. This book calls it center radius form. It's when you have a center at h, k, as shown here. The center is at hk, and the radius is r. You're going to take x minus h in parentheses squared plus y minus k in parentheses squared, and it's going to equal r squared. So we can write center radius form if we're given the center and the radius, and then we can also find the center and the radius if we are given the form. So to write it in center radius form or standard form, given that h is -3, k is 4, and r is 6, we're going to do parenthesis x minus h, so x minus -3 squared, plus parenthesis y minus k, so y minus 4 squared, equals r squared, which was 6. So I want to simplify that a little bit so that I get x plus 3 squared plus y minus 4 squared equals 36. Then on the other one, on B, they gave us a center at 0, 0 and a radius of 3. So in this case, h is 0 and k is 0, r is 3. So I'll do parenthesis x minus h, which is x minus 0 squared, plus another parenthesis y minus k, but k is 0, so y minus 0 squared equals 3 squared. Well, x minus 0 is just x, so I have x squared, y minus 0 is just y, plus y squared equals 9. And I don't really need those parentheses, so I'll have x squared plus y squared equals 9. And that's just a circle that has a center at 0, 0 and a radius of 3. If they give us the equation already filled out, then we can find out where the center is and what the radius is. So what I want to do is take x plus 3, set it equal to 0 to figure out that x equals -3. So the x coordinate of my radius is -3. Do the same thing with y. Y minus 4 equals 0, so y equals +4. So the y coordinate is 4. And then this is r squared. So r squared equals 36. Take the square root of both sides. Technically, I get plus or minus 6, but since we're talking about the radius of a circle, it would just be regular 6. So I have my center at -3, 4, and a radius of 6. Hey, that's the one we just looked at. So I will go to the point -3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, right there. And then to draw a radius of 6, I'm going to count 6 away from the center to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Put a little dot. I'm going to count 6 away from the center to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Put a dot. I'm going to count 6 up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to count 6 down from the center. And put a dot. And then I'm going to try really hard to make this look like a circle. I'm not very good at drawing them, so please don't come at me. But that has a center at -3, 4 and a radius of 6. And then I've got this one, x squared plus y squared equals 9. So same thing. Because there's nothing in with the x, that tells me x equals 0. And y equals 0, and then r squared equals 9, which means the radius is 3. So I put my center at 0, 0, count up 3, down 3, right 3, left 3, and then make my circle. Easy peasy. Now there is another form called general form. In general form, everything is like multiplied out and the right side is equal to 0. So all we're going to do to write the equation in general form is we are going to box multiply twice, move all the terms to the same side, and put them in the correct order, which means the x squared will go first, then the y squared, then the plain x term, the plain y term, the constant term, and then it's all going to equal 0. So I'll be box multiplying x plus 3 times x plus 3. So that's x squared, 3x, 3x, and 9. So my x terms are x squared plus 6x plus 9. Then I'm going to do the same thing with my y's. So y minus 4 times y minus 4 is going to give me plus y squared minus 8y plus 16. And then originally I had equals 36, so I still need that in my problem. Then to get that into general form, I am going to put the x squared terms first, then the y squared, then the plain x term, the linear term, so plus 6x, then the linear y term, minus 8y, and then I'm going to put the constant term. So I'm going to combine positive 9, positive 16, and then I'm going to subtract 36 from both sides so that it's on the same side of the equation as the other terms. So I'm going to combine 9 plus 16 and then minus 36. 9 plus 16 minus 36. That is negative 11. So minus 11 equals 0. And this is what we call general form. Now, here's the opposite operation here. If we are given general form, we can put it back into center radius form, but it ain't not that easy. So to change from general form back to center radius or standard form, here's our steps. The first thing we're going to do is move the constant term to the right side of the equation. Okay, so that's step number 1. Subtract 18 from both sides. So we get x squared minus 6x plus y squared plus 10y equals negative 18. The next thing we would do is divide each term by the coefficient of x squared if it's not just 1. But in this problem, the coefficient of x squared is 1, and so is the coefficient of y squared, so we don't have to do that. Then I usually do this on the same step. Complete the square for x and complete the square for y. I usually do that at the same time. So I am going to make myself a complete the square box for my x terms, and another complete the square box for my y terms, and then I have equals negative 18. So remember, with completing the square, I'm going to put x squared in the top left, and then I'm going to split this negative 6x equally between these two diagonals. So I'll have minus 3x here, minus 3x there. I'm going to do the same thing for y. So I put y squared in the top left, split my 10y equally, so 5y and 5y. And then I go to the edges to start figuring out what I need to complete the square in these two spaces. So this will be an x and an x, minus 3 and minus 3, which means the number I need to complete the square is negative 3 times 3, which is 9. Since it's in an equation, I also need to add 9 to the right side. And I'll do the same thing over here with the y's. This is y and y, 5 and 5. So the number I need to complete the square is 25 here, which I need to add to the right side as well. So I have to remember to add the bottom right squares to the right side also. At that point, I'm just going to write this in factored form. So I will have x minus 3 squared plus y plus 5 squared. I'm going to add these numbers over here. Negative 18 plus 9 plus 25 gives me 16. And now I can tell where the center is and what the radius is for this circle. So to find the center, I set x minus 3 equal to 0 to give me x equals 3. I set y plus 5 equal to 0 to give me y equals negative 5. And I take the square root over here to give me r is 4. So the center will be at 3, negative 5, and the radius is 4. All right, let's practice that again, but this time we have a number in front of the x. So I kind of want to keep these steps right here. The first thing I have to do is move the constant term to the right side of the equation. Well, it is already over there. So step 1 done. Second thing I need to do is divide each term by the coefficient of x squared. When you're working with circles, the coefficient of x squared is going to be the same as the coefficient of y squared, so I don't have to do extra work. I just have to divide each term by that coefficient of x squared. So now I've got regular x squared plus y squared minus 3x plus 5y equals 1/2. Okay, I might have wanted to write that in a slightly different order so that all my x's were together and all my y's were together. So if you feel like doing that, you could do x squared minus 3x plus y squared plus 5y equals 1/2. But now I've got to do the complete the square for x, complete the square for y. So we'll go ahead and make the boxes. Plus my y boxes equals my 1/2. And I'm going to put x squared in that top left. I have to equally split negative 3x, which means I'm going to have negative 3/2 x in each of these squares. Negative 3/2 x. Do the same for y. Y squared in the top left. Equally split 5 y's gives 5/2 y in each of these boxes. And then I've got to figure out the outside edges so that I can figure out the number that completes the square. So here I'll have x, x, and negative 3/2, negative 3/2. To complete the square, I have to multiply negative 3/2 times negative 3/2, which is going to be 3 times 3 in the numerator, so 9, 2 times 2 in the denominator, 4. I have to remember to add that to the right side as well. For the y's, I'll have y and y, 5 over 2 and 5 over 2. The number that completes the square is 5/2 times 5/2, so 5 times 5 in the numerator, 25, 2 times 2 in the denominator, 4. And remember to add that to the right side as well. Then I need to write this in factored form. So it is x minus 3/2 squared plus y plus 5/2 squared equals, now I have to do 1/2 plus 9/4 plus 25/4. So I will need a common denominator, which would make 2/4 plus 9/4 plus 25/4, which is 2 plus 9 plus 25, 36. So 36/4. Actually, 36/4 simplifies to regular 9. So I probably should have written that x minus 3/2 squared plus y plus 5/2 squared equals regular 9. And then I can figure out the center and radius. I set x minus 3/2 equal to 0, so I get x equals 3/2. I set y plus 5/2 equal to 0 to get y equals negative 5/2. And then I do r squared equals 9, so r is 3. So I can tell you the center is at 3/2, -5/2, and the radius is 3. Last example here. The graph of this equation is either a point or non-existent. Which is it? That is a great question. To be able to answer that question, we need to know that the graph will be non-existent if the right side is negative. The graph will be a single point, which is the center, if the right side is 0. So we need to put this into standard form or center radius form. So if r squared is negative, the circle is non-existent. If r squared equals 0, it is a single point. So we're doing the same process that we just did. It's just going to look a little bit different when we get finished. So I want to start by moving the constant term over to the right side. So subtract 33, subtract 33. And then I'm going to have x squared plus 10x plus y squared minus 4y equals -33. I need to go ahead and start completing the square. So I'll draw my box for the x squareds. So we got x squared. Split the 10x's equally, so 5x and 5x. Make a box for the y's. Put y squared in the top left. Split your -4y equally, so -2y and -2y equals -33. Then figure out my outside numbers. So this will be x and 5 and 5, which means the number that I need to complete the square is going to be 5 times 5, so 25. Add that to the right side as well. In the y's, I'm going to have y, and -2, -2, which makes the number I need to complete the square -2 times -2, which is 4. I need to add 4 to the right side. Then go ahead and factor. So I'm going to have x plus 5 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals, I'm going to do -33 plus 25 plus 4 is -4. So since that right side is negative, that means the circle is non-existent. If that right side would have been 0, then I would have said that that is a single point, and I would have said the single point is at the center, which in this case would have been at -5, 2.